Okay, again we'll turn to Ecclesiastes. Again, chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Again, that statement, and it's repeated throughout the book. You need to realize that it is not Solomon's aim to prove that statement, but to prove his conclusion. Ecclesiastes 12:13. Fear God and keep His commandments. So though the word vanity occurs 33 times in 28 verses, he's using it to prove his conclusion, which is basically focus upon the Lord. And again, as Solomon speaks of vanity, he's doing so from the perspective of apart from God. He's looking at life basically minus God. In chapter 1, verse 16, just by way of quick review, he states his position in life. He says, I am come to great estate, gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. So he's an individual that found fame and renown and riches and wisdom. But again, apart from God, this is all vanity. He had an abundance of experience of earthly possessions. He says, yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. In verse 17, he confesses that he gave himself to know and understand the meaning of life. Again, he's looking at it minus God. He searched for life's meaning in knowledge, searched for it in wisdom, he searched for it in madness or moral perversity, searched for it in folly, that is, foolishness, disregard of the spiritual. And in his attempt to find meaning, to find fulfillment and happiness, there was a reckless pursuit of earthly pleasures. And again, he came to this conclusion. I perceived, that is, I became aware that this is also vexation of spirit. That is, it's very disturbing. It's an agitation, it's a trouble. And then we entered into chapter 2. He continues his fruitless search for lasting satisfaction. Again, minus God. From verse 1, he's again communing with his heart, and having not found fulfillment and happiness and natural wisdom and knowledge, he determines to look elsewhere. And he looks in other areas of life. And now he's reflecting upon his pursuits for fulfillment apart from God. And he's talking to himself. And in the chapter he uses the personal pronouns I 36 times and me 14 times. So he's talking to himself. He's reviewing his pursuits. And he comes to this conclusion in verse 11, verse 17, verse 26. He says, vanity and vexation of spirit. He mentions in verses 1 through 3 the vanity of personal pleasure. He, again, is seeking fulfillment. Minus God, he turns to pleasures. He says it's all empty. It's all empty. He looked in the areas of wine in wisdom and folly. He did not whine, of course, speaking of indulgences. He didn't find fulfillment there. Folly speaks of that which is frivolous, trivial, unimportant. And he says that's not where he found fulfillment. It's all vanity. And that brings us to the vanity of earthly accumulation. Verses 4 through 7, or verse 4 through 11. He said in verse 4, I made me great works. I made me great works. Again, he's pursuing fulfillment. He's pursuing happiness. Nothing wrong with works, but minus God, it's nothing. It's vanity. It's chasing the wind. He undertook one project after another, and that's what people do. And accumulating what he thought would bring him personal and lasting satisfaction. And this is what the world does. They move from one thing to another. As we said last week, that's why someone who's in marketing, all they have to say is new. People are interested. They're interested. Because the old hasn't given them what they're looking for. The new isn't going to either, but they don't know that yet. And they just go from one thing to another, seeking lasting satisfaction, seeking to fill that void that was created in the garden at the fall. And that man is born with that void, a void that only God can fill. So man is always searching, not necessarily searching for God, but he's always searching to fill that void. He doesn't even know the void is there, but it is. And he's always seeking to fill that void. And as long as he seeks to fill it apart from God, it's all vanity. It's all a chasing of the wind. So he accumulated all that he thought would bring him lasting happiness. He mentions buildings and vineyards there in verse 4. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted vineyards. Verse 5, I made me gardens and orchards. I planted trees in them of all kind and fruits. I made me pools of water, therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I got me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained within me. So Solomon makes great effort and he spent much energy and time seeking fulfillment in these things. And notice verse 4. He says, I made me, I builded me, I planted me. I, me, I, me, I, me. It's all about him. All about his personal fulfillment. Verse 5, I made me, I planted. Verse 6, I made me. Verse 7, I got me and had. I had. Verse 8, I gathered me, I got me. So again, the result of all of his efforts. Verse 9, so I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. So he is elevated above everyone else. And then in verse 10, and whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. So Solomon had everything. Had everything that he ever wanted. And though he experienced some joy and some pleasure and some satisfaction in these things, it was all temporary. It was all temporary. He got tired of it pretty quick. And he came to his conclusion in verse 11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do. I looked upon it all. Considered all the effort I put into that. Considered all the time that I devoted toward these things. Trying to find fulfillment. Trying to find lasting satisfaction. And behold, all was vanity. That is, it was all empty. But not only that, it was vexation of spirit. It caused me misery. It caused me agitation. And again, that pretty much explains why people today, almost everybody's agitated. Doesn't take much. Because they're chasing the wind. They've been doing it for years. Getting nowhere. And there was no profit under the sun. Again, that is a limited statement. There was no profit. Again, you have to take in the context. He's looking for lasting fulfillment, lasting satisfaction apart from God. He didn't find those things. There was no profit. So, Jesus stated what Solomon is stating. Jesus stated it in Matthew 6, in verse 19. That we're not to lay up our treasures upon earth, but in heaven. And the truth of such is also declared in 1 John 2, verse 17. And the truth that everyone needs to be brought to. Ecclesiastes 12:13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. The whole matter. This is what it all boils down to. Fear God. Keep His commandments. In verses 12 through verse 17, he comes to lasting fulfillment and happiness is not found in earthly wisdom. He has discovered that it's not found in folly and things of that sort. It's not found in accumulation. And it's not found in earthly wisdom. And he speaks of that in verses 12 through verse 17. And I turned myself to behold wisdom. Again, he's now turned away from accumulations. That didn't work, so I'll try something else. And madness and folly. For what can the man do that cometh after the king, even that which hath been already done? Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all, that is, wise and foolish. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even unto me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart that this also was vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever, seeing that which now is and the days to come shall be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool. Therefore I hated life, because the work that it wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. For all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. So in these verses, Solomon is disappointed in what he found, or more accurately, what he did not find in his experience of earthly possessions. So he turns to his wisdom and his intellect. And in these verses, Solomon examines three matters. Again, relative to personal and lasting fulfillment and happiness in life. He speaks of three different approaches to life. Okay, I'm not happy with this approach to life, so I'll try this approach. I'm not happy with this, so I'll try this. So he looks at three different approaches to life. Again, the context, this is all minus God. All void of God. He speaks of wisdom in verse 12. I turn myself to behold wisdom. And he mentions madness, and he mentions folly. Three approaches to life. And we see it all around us today. People take these various approaches to life. By wisdom is simply meant there is a prudent and orderly approach to life. There are those who are lost who have that. They have a prudent, orderly approach to life. Again, minus God. Then he mentions madness, which is irrational, wild, reckless behavior, pleasure-seeking. So there's the individual that is prudent in his approach to life. There's the individual that's just irrational and just reckless. Then he mentions folly, which you could also classify under madness. But folly is basically the rejection of truth. It's foolishness and ignorance. He then, by way of question, states that no man, because of his position in life, no man can dig deeper into these matters than he. No one's more qualified than him concerning these matters relative to lasting fulfillment and happiness. He sees wisdom, again, these three approaches to life, wisdom, madness, folly. Verses 13 and 14, he sees that the one who approaches life wisely, wisdom is superior to madness and folly. And he states that in verses 13 and 14. He has experienced both wisdom and folly relative to lasting fulfillment and happiness apart from God. And in his comparison of the two different approaches, he states clearly, wisdom excelleth folly. The individual who lives life in a prudent, orderly fashion is going to have a better life than the one who lives in foolishness. And all you have to do is look around and look around at lost people, and you can see that. Those who have a prudent approach to life and orderly approach to life are better off than those who are irrational and who reject truth and live foolishly. So he says, wisdom excelleth folly. The extent of that is as far as light excelleth darkness. So he uses the analogy of light and darkness to express the vast difference between a wise life, and again speaking of earthly wisdom, and wise life and a foolish life. They are as different as night and day. Verse 14, to illustrate this, he draws a comparison between the wise man and the foolish man. He says the wise man's eyes are in his head. What he's saying there is that a wise individual possesses discernment. They have insight. They have some common sense. And they live that way. They may be unsaved, but they live their life that way, which is a good way to live life. On the contrary, the fool walketh in darkness. He's saying the individual marked by foolishness, on the other hand, he lacks direction. He lacks understanding. He does not know where he's going. Has no idea. And they do not consider consequences. If I do this, this is going to happen. That doesn't even enter into their brain. They walk in darkness. Again, wisdom excelleth folly. You take two lost people. One approaches life in a wise manner, one approaches life in a foolish manner. Who's better off? It's quite obvious. Solomon declares in verse 16, how dieth the wise man as the fool? So one approaches life prudently. Another approaches life foolishly. Again, this is all apart from God. He says, but they both die. They both have the same end. They both die. It is Psalm 49:10. Wise men die. Wise men die. Likewise the fool and brutish person. Wise men die. Likewise the fool and the brutish, the person who lives like an animal, lacks sensibility. They all die. They all die. Again, he's looking at everything apart from God. Just take God out of the picture. You have this individual who lives wisely, and you have this individual who lives foolishly. They all come to the same end. They both die. They both die. So Solomon's conclusion, verse 17, therefore, I hated life. There are a lot of people today who hate life. Sadly, there are those who profess salvation that hate life. Something seriously wrong there. But this is the conclusion, looking at life apart from God. I hated life. He has stated that the one who lives life wisely He dies just like the one who lives life in reckless abandon. How many times you've heard people say a wise individual, earthly wisdom, lives his life prudently, orderly. He's killed in a tragic way. Why? People ask, why? He was such a good person. Then you take someone who lives foolishly. They may live longer. And people say, they don't understand. And they get mad at God. They hate life. That's the world. So Solomon's searching for personal and lasting fulfillment in possession, and then seeks it in wisdom. And he comes to this realization. The one who lives wisely gets sick, just like the one who lives foolishly. Maybe not to the same degree. The foolish person brings sickness and disease in their lives many times. But overall, sickness, disease come upon both the wise and the foolish. And death comes upon the wise and the foolish. Comes upon the rich and the poor. And looking at that apart from God, take God out of the picture, he sees life as irrational. It doesn't make sense. Man's always trying to figure out, well, that don't make sense. Why does a good person, they've done good with their life, and their life is tragically taken, and then the person who lives like a fool, they live. So life becomes, looking at it without God, it doesn't make sense. And they come to this conclusion. What's the use? It's all futile. And when he considers all his work, there in verse 17, he says it's grievous. That is, it's oppressive. It's onerous. And he says all is vanity. Again, it's like chasing the wind. I put forth all this effort, take all this time. For what? All is vanity. Again, apart from God. And vexation. That is, life becomes an irritation. Life becomes an affliction. Becomes a trouble. Vexation of spirit. Again, this is the conclusion of one who is seeking personal and lasting fulfillment, satisfaction, joy apart from God. And what he's saying here is, it is a painful, vexation of spirit speaks of pain, and it is an exhausting pursuit. Vanity, chasing the wind. And so it is. So is life for the majority. So is life for the unsaved individual. And again, sadly, that's how life is for many who profess salvation. And the reason is the context, it's apart from God. Life apart from God is very painful. And it is an exhausting pursuit. And it is an endless pursuit. Again, all of this supports his final conclusion. Fear God. keep his commandments. Let's look to the Lord. Heavenly Father,